My name is Anya Blackwood, and I'm the daughter of Alpha Marcus Blackwood of the Silver Moon Pack. Or rather, I was. Now we were nothing more than the conquered, and I was about to become something I never imagined, a bride to our enemy. The smell of smoke still hung in the air 3 days after the battle ended. I stood at my bedroom window, watching the last of the funeral pyres burn in the distance. Each flame represented someone I'd known, someone who'd fought to protect our pack. Someone who'd died because we weren't strong enough. Anya. My father's voice came from behind me, rough and broken. I didn't turn around. I couldn't bear to see the defeat in his eyes again. Is it decided then? I asked, my breath fogging the cold glass. The Bloodfang Alpha has agreed to our terms. You marry him, and our people live. They get food, shelter, protection. He paused. It's the only way. I finally turned to face him. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. His dark hair was streaked with more gray than before, and the proud set of his shoulders had crumbled. The great Alpha Marcus Blackwood, reduced to bargaining away his only daughter. When? I asked. Tomorrow morning. A convoy will come for you at dawn. Tomorrow. I had one night left as myself, one night before I became a stranger's wife. A stranger who'd killed dozens of our warriors. A stranger who ruled through fear and violence. Alpha Ryker Blackthorn of the Bloodfang Pack, even his name sounded like death. What do you know about him? I asked, moving to my dresser to begin packing. I might as well start. Putting off the inevitable wouldn't change anything. My father sat heavily on the edge of my bed. He's young for an alpha, only 28. Took over his pack when he was 21 after his father died in a hunting accident. Since then, he's conquered 3 neighboring packs and absorbed their territories. And now ours makes 4. I folded a blue dress carefully, trying to keep my hands steady. What else? He's brutal. Efficient. His pack is run like a military unit. They say he's never lost a battle, never shown mercy to an enemy. My father's voice dropped to a whisper. They say he's never taken a mate because no woman could survive him. Ice shot through my veins, but I forced myself to keep folding clothes. Well, I guess we're about to find out if that's true. Anya. No. I spun around to face him. Don't you dare apologize. Don't you dare tell me you're sorry. You made this choice. We all made this choice. Our people are alive because of it. That has to be enough. But even as I said the words, terror clawed at my chest. What kind of man would I be bound to? What kind of life was waiting for me in the Bloodfang territory? That night, I barely slept. I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to memorize every detail of my room. The way moonlight filtered through my pale blue curtains. The sound of wind chimes on my balcony. The familiar scent of jasmine from my mother's garden below. My mother had died when I was 15, a rogue attack that came in the night. My father never remarried. He'd loved her too much, he said. I wondered if I'd ever have a chance to love someone, or if I was destined for a cold, practical marriage with a man who saw me as nothing more than a prize of war. Dawn came too soon. I dressed in my best traveling clothes, dark jeans, boots, and a warm coat. It wasn't a wedding dress, but then again, this wasn't really a wedding. It was a transaction. The convoy that came for me was unlike anything I'd seen. 6 black SUVs with tinted windows, flanked by motorcycle escorts. Everything was military precision, cold efficiency. Just like their Alpha, I supposed. My father walked me to the first vehicle. His hands shook as he hugged me goodbye. "Be smart," he whispered in my ear. "You're clever, Anya. Use that. Find a way to survive, and if you can." He pulled back to meet my eyes. "Find a way to help our people thrive under his rule." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Then I climbed into the SUV, and the door closed with a final, terrible sound. The interior was luxury leather and dark glass. I was alone except for the driver, who didn't speak. As we pulled away from the only home I'd ever known, I pressed my palm against the window and watched my father grow smaller and smaller until he disappeared. Chapter 2, Into Enemy Territory. The drive to Bloodfang territory took 6 hours. We traveled through dense forests and over mountain passes, moving deeper into the wildlands than I'd ever been. The further we got from Silver Moon Pack lands, the more the landscape changed. Where our territory had been green valleys and gentle hills, Bloodfang land was harsh and unforgiving. Rocky cliffs jutted up from pine forests. Rivers rushed fast and dangerous through narrow gorges. Even the sky seemed darker here, heavy with gray clouds that promised snow. Everything about this place whispered of danger, of a pack that had learned to thrive in conditions that would break others. No wonder they were such fierce warriors. As we crested a final hill, I got my first glimpse of the Bloodfang compound. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a pack house, it was a fortress. High stone walls surrounded a cluster of buildings dominated by a massive central structure that looked like it belonged in medieval times. Watchtowers stood at each corner, and I could see guards moving along the walls. This wasn't a home. This was a stronghold. The gates opened as our convoy approached, heavy metal barriers that looked like they could withstand a siege. As we drove through, I saw more of the pack grounds. Training areas where wolves sparred in both human and wolf form. Weapons ranges. Barrack-style buildings that housed pack members. Everything was organized, efficient, intimidating. The people I glimpsed were fit and alert, moving with the disciplined purpose of soldiers. We pulled up in front of the main building, and my door was opened by a stern-faced woman in tactical gear. "Anya Blackwood?" she asked, though she clearly already knew. "Yes. I'm Commander Sarah Chen, head of pack security. Please come with me." I climbed out of the SUV, my legs unsteady after the long ride. The mountain air was thin and cold, and I pulled my coat tighter around me. Commander Chen led me up stone steps to massive wooden doors carved with symbols I didn't recognize. They opened at our approach, revealing an interior that took my breath away. The main hall was enormous, with a ceiling that soared at least 3 stories high. Tapestries hung from the walls depicting battle scenes and pack history. A fire roared in a stone fireplace large enough to stand in. Everything was built on a grand scale, designed to intimidate and impress. But it was also beautiful in a harsh way. The craftsmanship was incredible, every detail speaking of pride and tradition. "The Alpha is waiting," Commander Chen said, leading me deeper into the hall. My heart began to race. This was it. I was about to meet the man who would control the rest of my life. We approached a raised area at the far end of the hall where a single massive chair sat, not quite a throne, but close. And in that chair, Alpha Ryker Blackthorn was not what I expected. I'd pictured a giant, scarred brute with wild eyes and bloody hands. Instead, the man who rose to meet me was tall but lean, probably 6'3" with a runner's build rather than a bodybuilder's bulk. His dark hair was cut short and neat. His clothes, black jeans and a gray sweater, were simple and well-fitted. But his eyes were what made my breath catch. They were the palest blue I'd ever seen, like ice on a winter lake. Cold, calculating, and completely focused on me. He studied me with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey, and I forced myself to stand straight and meet his gaze. I wouldn't cower, no matter how afraid I was. Anya Blackwood. His voice was deep, controlled. Welcome to Bloodfang territory. Alpha Blackthorn. I managed to keep my voice steady. Thank you for honoring the treaty. A slight smile touched his lips, but it wasn't warm. Honor. Is that what we're calling it? Commander Chen stepped forward. Alpha, shall I show her to her quarters? No. His eyes never left mine. I'll do it myself. We have things to discuss. My pulse spiked, but I nodded. Of course. He came down from the raised area, moving with fluid grace that reminded me he wasn't just an alpha, he was a warrior. When he stopped in front of me, I realized just how tall he was. I was 5'6" and had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. This way, he said, and started walking. I followed him through corridors lined with more tapestries and weapons displays. Pack members we passed stopped and bowed their heads respectfully, but I noticed they also watched me with curious, suspicious eyes. The enemy Alpha's new bride. I wondered what they'd been told about me. Your rooms are in the family wing, Ryker said as we walked. You'll have a bedroom, sitting room, and private bathroom. Meals can be brought to you, or you can eat in the main dining hall if you prefer company. Am I a prisoner? I asked bluntly. He stopped walking and turned to face me. That depends entirely on you. Meaning? Meaning that as long as you cause no trouble and make no attempts to harm my pack, you're free to move around the compound. You can explore, meet people, participate in pack activities. His pale eyes hardened. But make no mistake, you are watched at all times. Any sign of betrayal, any hint that you're here to cause damage, and your freedom will be revoked immediately. I lifted my chin. And what about outside the compound? Am I free to leave? No. The single word hung between us like a blade. So I was a prisoner, just one with a comfortable cage. I see. Do you? He stepped closer, and I caught his scent, pine, leather, and something wild that made my wolf stir restlessly. I know what you are, Anya Blackwood. You're the diplomat's daughter, educated and clever. You grew up in your father's council meetings, learning strategy and negotiation. You think you can find a weakness here, some way to undermine my authority or free your people. My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. He was right, of course. That was exactly what I'd planned to do. But let me be very clear, he continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I am not your father. I am not a man who can be manipulated with pretty words and careful politics. I've survived by being smarter, stronger, and more ruthless than everyone around me. If you try to play games with me, you will lose. And when you lose, it won't just be you who pays the price. The threat to my people was clear. I swallowed hard but held his gaze. I understand. Good. He stepped back and resumed walking. Then we'll get along fine. Chapter 3, The Wolf's Den. My rooms were more luxurious than I'd expected. The bedroom was spacious with a huge four-poster bed draped in midnight blue silk. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace, warming the space against the mountain cold. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the pack's training grounds and the forest beyond. The sitting room was equally elegant, with comfortable chairs arranged around another fireplace and shelves lined with books. I was surprised by the books. I'd expected military manuals and warfare histories, but I saw poetry, philosophy, even some romance novels. Someone has eclectic tastes, I murmured, running my finger along the spine of a collection of Shakespeare's sonnets. Those are mine. I spun around to find Ryker standing in the doorway, watching me. I hadn't heard him enter. You read poetry? I asked, unable to hide my surprise. You sound shocked. I am. It doesn't fit with your reputation. He entered the room fully, moving to pour himself a drink from a crystal decanter on a side table. And what exactly is my reputation? That you're a brutal killer who rules through fear and violence. All true. He took a sip of what looked like whiskey. But incomplete. A mind is a weapon just as much as claws or fangs. Perhaps more so. I studied him, trying to reconcile this calm, articulate man with the stories I'd heard. Why are you telling me this? Because we're going to be married, and I prefer my mate to understand who I am rather than rely on rumors and legend. Married. The word hit me like a physical blow. I'd known it was coming, but hearing it stated so matter-of-factly made it real in a way that terrified me. When? I asked. 3 days. That gives you time to settle in and meet key pack members. The ceremony will be simple. This isn't a love match, it's a political alliance. No point in pretending otherwise. His bluntness stung, even though I knew he was right. Still, every girl dreamed of her wedding day being about love and happiness, not duty and politics. Will my father be able to attend? I asked. No. He's not welcome in my territory. The flat rejection hurt more than I expected. My wedding day, and I'd be completely alone. Ryker must have seen something in my expression because his voice softened slightly. Your pack will hear about the ceremony. They'll know you fulfilled your part of the treaty. Small comfort, but I nodded. He finished his drink and set the glass down. Dinner is at 7 in the main dining hall. I'll send someone to escort you. Will you be there? Yes. You'll be introduced to the senior pack members. He paused at the doorway. Anya. I looked up. Don't mistake me for a monster. I'm not unnecessarily cruel. But I am Alpha here, and my pack's safety comes before everything else. Remember that, and we'll do fine. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the scent of pine and leather and a dozen unanswered questions. I spent the next 2 hours exploring my rooms and trying to process everything that had happened. The reality of my situation was setting in. I was hundreds of miles from home, surrounded by enemies, about to marry a man I barely knew. But I wasn't helpless. I had my intelligence, my diplomatic training, and my determination to protect my people. If I was going to survive here, if I was going to find a way to help my pack, I needed to understand this place and these people. Starting with my future husband. At 7 o'clock sharp, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find a young woman about my age with short red hair and friendly green eyes. Hi. I'm Emma, beta female of the pack. I'm here to escort you to dinner. Finally, a smile. Thank you. I'm Anya. I know. She grinned. Everyone knows. You're all anyone's been talking about for days. We started walking toward the main dining hall. What have they been saying? Emma glanced around, then leaned closer. Mostly that they can't believe the Alpha is finally taking a mate. He's turned down dozens of potential matches over the years. Some people were starting to think he never would. Why me, then? I asked. Political necessity, I suppose. But... She paused. Can I tell you something? I've known Ryker since we were kids. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you when you arrived. My steps faltered. What do you mean? Interested. Like you were a puzzle he wanted to solve. Emma shrugged. Maybe it's nothing. But Ryker doesn't usually bother with puzzles unless they fascinate him. Before I could respond, we arrived at the dining hall. The massive room buzzed with conversation, but it fell silent the moment I entered. Dozens of pairs of eyes turned to study me, and I lifted my chin and straightened my shoulders. Let them look. I was Alpha-born, and I wouldn't be cowed. Ryker stood at the head table, and he nodded toward the empty chair beside him. As I walked through the hall, whispered conversations resumed around me. I caught fragments. Pretty enough, seems fragile, wonder how long she'll last. I took my seat beside Ryker, very aware of his presence beside me. He wore all black tonight, and the color made his pale eyes even more striking. Everyone, he said, his voice carrying easily through the room. This is Anya Blackwood, who will be my mate and your Luna in 3 days. Treat her with the respect due her position. A chorus of, yes, Alpha, rose from the assembled pack members. The meal began, and I was introduced to the senior wolves one by one. Beta James Morrison, Emma's mate, was a stocky man with intelligent brown eyes and a firm handshake. Commander Chin I'd already met. There was Dr. Lisa Park, the pack physician, and several others whose names and roles I tried to memorize. They were all polite but cautious, clearly waiting to see what kind of Luna I'd be. I answered their questions carefully, sharing just enough about myself to seem open without revealing anything that could be used against my birth pack. As the evening progressed, I became increasingly aware of Ryker beside me. He didn't speak much, but I could feel him watching me interact with his people. Testing me, I realized. This wasn't just dinner, it was an evaluation. Fine. Let him test me. When dessert was served, I seized an opportunity. Dr. Park had mentioned that the pack was dealing with a respiratory illness that was proving difficult to treat. Have you tried willow bark tea combined with elderberry extract? I asked. We had a similar outbreak 2 winters ago, and that combination worked when traditional treatments failed. Dr. Park's eyebrows rose. You have medical training? Some. My mother was the pack healer before she died. She taught me about herbal remedies. I turned to address the broader group. Where I come from, we believe healing comes from understanding the whole person, not just treating symptoms. Sometimes old remedies work better than new medicines. Interesting philosophy, Ryker said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken to me directly during dinner. It served us well. And yet your pack still fell to mine. The words were softly spoken, but they hit like a slap. Around the table, conversation stopped. Everyone was watching now, waiting to see how I'd respond to the Alpha's challenge. I turned to face him fully, meeting those ice-blue eyes. Yes, we did. Your warriors are stronger, your strategy superior. But strength isn't the only thing that matters in leadership. Sometimes wisdom and compassion serve a pack better than fear. A dangerous silence fell over the room. I'd essentially criticized his leadership style in front of his entire senior staff. It was either very brave or very stupid, and I wasn't sure which. Ryker studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to my shock, he smiled. Not the cold, calculating expression from earlier, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Well said, he murmured. Then, louder, perhaps that's exactly what this pack needs, someone to remind us that strength comes in many forms. The tension in the room eased, and conversations resumed. But I noticed several pack members looking at me with new interest, as if seeing me for the first time. As the evening wound down, Ryker walked me back to my rooms. We didn't speak until we reached my door. "That was well done tonight," he said. "Was it another test?" "Everything is a test when you're Luna." He stepped closer, and I caught his scent again, wild and intoxicating. "But you passed." "My people respect strength, but they also value wisdom. You showed them both." "Good to know." He reached out and touched my cheek, the gesture so unexpected that I froze. His fingers were warm against my skin, and for a moment, something flickered in those pale eyes that wasn't cold calculation. 3 days, Anya. Then you'll be mine, and I'll be yours. I hope you're ready for what that means. Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me standing in my doorway with my heart racing and my cheek burning where he'd touched me. I closed the door and leaned against it, pressing my hand to my chest to calm my racing pulse. What was happening to me? This was the enemy, the man who'd conquered my pack and forced me into marriage. I shouldn't be feeling anything for him but hatred. But as I replayed the evening, his unexpected smile, the approval in his voice, the gentle touch of his fingers, I realized that hatred wasn't what I felt at all. And that terrified me more than anything else. Chapter 4: Unexpected Depths. The next morning, I woke to find a tray of breakfast outside my door along with a note written in bold, precise handwriting: Explore. Learn. The more you understand this place, the better Luna you'll be. R. I ate quickly and dressed in jeans and boots, then set out to see more of the compound. In daylight, it was even more impressive than I'd realized. The main buildings were surrounded by smaller structures, workshops, training facilities, even what looked like a school. I started with the training grounds, watching from a distance as pack members practiced combat in both human and wolf form. Their skill was incredible, every movement precise and deadly. No wonder they defeated us so easily. Impressive, isn't it? I turned to find Commander Chen approaching, dressed in workout gear. Very, I admitted. How many hours a day do they train? Minimum of 4, but most do more. Ryker expects excellence from everyone, but he expects it most from himself. He's usually out here by 5 a.m. Where is he now? Border Patrol. We've had some rogue activity to the east. She studied me. You could join a training session if you want. I assume you have combat training? Some. Actually, I was quite good, my father had insisted on it, but I didn't want to reveal all my capabilities yet. Good. A Luna needs to be able to defend herself and her pack. We walked together toward the school building, where I could hear children's voices. How many pups are there? I asked. 47, ages 5 to 17. Education is mandatory. Ryker believes ignorance breeds weakness. Inside, I found classrooms buzzing with activity. Children were learning everything from basic reading to advanced mathematics to pack history. I paused outside one room where a teacher was discussing trade negotiations with teenage students. Luna training? I asked Commander Chen. Leadership training. Every pack member is taught to think strategically, to understand how their actions affect the whole. She glanced at me. Ryker implemented these programs when he became Alpha. He believes a strong pack requires strong individuals. It was surprisingly progressive for such a militaristic pack. I'd expected blind obedience, not critical thinking. We continued our tour, visiting the workshops where pack members created everything from weapons to furniture to clothing. The medical facilities were state-of-the-art, better equipped than many human hospitals. There was even a library that rivaled some universities. This is incredible, I said, genuinely impressed. It's like a small city. Ryker's vision, Commander Chen said with obvious pride. When he took over, this pack was strong but insular. He opened us up to trade, to learning, to growth. That's how we became powerful enough to expand our territory. Through conquest. Through strength. But also through offering something better to the packs we absorbed. Look around, do you see oppressed people? Or do you see a thriving community? I had to admit, I saw the latter. The pack members I'd encountered seemed healthy, educated, and purposeful. Nothing like the downtrodden subjects I'd expected. What about the packs you conquered? Are they treated well? See for yourself. She led me to another section of the compound where I met several wolves from the previously absorbed packs. They spoke openly about their experiences, the initial fear, the gradual realization that life under Bloodfang rule was actually better than what they'd left behind. My daughter gets to go to school now, one woman told me. In our old pack, females weren't educated past basic literacy. Here, she's studying engineering. My son is training to be a doctor, another added. The opportunities here are incredible. By afternoon, my understanding of the Bloodfang pack had been completely upended. This wasn't a brutal dictatorship, it was a thriving society built on meritocracy and excellence. I was sitting in a small garden behind the main building, processing everything I'd learned, when familiar footsteps approached. So, Ryker's voice came from behind me. What do you think of your new home? I turned to see him approaching, still in clothes that suggested he'd just returned from patrol. There was dirt on his boots and a small scratch on his cheek, but he looked alert and energized. It's not what I expected. What did you expect? Oppression. Fear. Suffering. I met his eyes. Instead, I find the most progressive pack I've ever seen. He sat beside me on the stone bench, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. And that surprises you? Yes. Your reputation. My reputation is exactly what I want it to be. Fear is a tool, Anya. When other packs believe I'm a monster, they think twice before challenging me. It prevents unnecessary conflicts. But you're not actually a monster. Aren't I? He turned to face me fully. I've killed dozens of wolves in battle. I've destroyed packs and scattered families. I've made decisions that cost lives because they served the greater good. What would you call that? Leadership, I said quietly. Hard choices that someone has to make. Something flickered in his pale eyes, surprise, maybe even gratitude. Most people don't see it that way. Most people haven't had to lead. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and I found myself studying his profile. In the afternoon sunlight, he looked younger, less intimidating. More like a man carrying heavy burdens than a ruthless conqueror. Can I ask you something? I said. What exactly was I getting myself into? Go ahead. Why haven't you taken a mate before now? Commander Chen said you'd turned down dozens of matches. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because I couldn't afford weakness. You think a mate would make you weak? I think caring about someone gives your enemies a target. He looked at me. But circumstances change. The pack needs a Luna, and political alliances require sacrifice. Is that all I am to you? A sacrifice? The question slipped out before I could stop it, and I immediately regretted it. What did it matter what I was to him? This was a business arrangement, nothing more. But Ryker leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. If you were just a sacrifice, Anya, I would have chosen someone easier to manage. Someone who wouldn't challenge me or make me question my methods. Then why me? Because you're exactly what this pack needs, even if they don't know it yet. His hand moved to cover mine on the bench between us. And because from the moment you walked into my hall and looked me in the eye without flinching, I knew you were different. My breath caught. His hand was warm and strong, and the look in his eyes made my heart race in ways I didn't understand. Ryker. Alpha Blackthorn, a voice interrupted. We sprang apart to find Beta Morrison approaching. Sorry to disturb you, but we need to discuss the eastern border situation. Of course. Ryker stood, his expression shifting back to business mode. We'll continue this conversation later, he told me, then strode away with his Beta. I sat alone in the garden, my hands still tingling where he'd touched me. What was happening between us? This wasn't supposed to be about attraction or connection, it was supposed to be about duty and survival. But as I replayed his words and the intensity in his eyes, I realized that my feelings were becoming dangerously complicated. 2 days until the wedding. 2 days until I became Luna to a pack I was starting to admire and mate to a man I was beginning to understand. A man who was nothing like I'd expected and everything I hadn't known I was looking for. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it filled me with the anticipation that made my wolf pace restlessly beneath my skin. Chapter 5, The Wedding Day. The morning of my wedding dawned gray and cold, with snow beginning to fall outside my windows. I stood looking out at the white-dusted compound, trying to calm my nerves. Today I would become Luna of the Bloodfang pack. Today I would marry Alpha Ryker Blackthorn. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Emma carrying a large white box and wearing a huge grin. Wedding day, she announced, pushing past me into the room. Time to get you ready. Emma, you don't have to. Are you kidding? I've been waiting years for Ryker to finally take a mate. I'm not missing a second of this. She set the box on my bed and opened it, revealing layers of white tissue paper. Besides, you can't get married without proper help. She lifted out a dress that made me gasp. It was stunning, ivory silk that seemed to shimmer in the light, with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt that would fall to just below my knees. The neckline was elegant without being revealing, and delicate beadwork caught the light like stars. It's beautiful, I breathed. Ryker picked it out himself, Emma said with a knowing smile. Spent hours with the dressmaker getting every detail right. That surprised me. I'd assumed he'd delegate such tasks, but apparently, he'd taken personal interest in my wedding dress. There's more. She lifted out matching shoes, delicate and perfect, then jewelry, simple but elegant pieces that complemented the dress perfectly. As Emma helped me get ready, other pack women arrived. Dr. Park came to help with my hair, styling it in an elegant updo with a few curls framing my face. Commander Chen surprised me by appearing with makeup supplies, revealing an unexpected talent for creating the perfect bridal look. You look beautiful, Dr. Park said as they stepped back to admire their work. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. The dress fit perfectly, the makeup enhanced my features without being overdone, and the hairstyle made me look elegant and mature. I looked like a Luna. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched by their efforts. All of you. I know this situation is unusual. Every wedding is unusual in its own way, Emma interrupted. What matters is that you're joining our family. And any woman who can make Ryker smile the way you do is already one of us. Before I could ask what she meant by that, another knock came at the door. Commander Chen answered it and returned with a small wrapped package. From the Alpha, she said. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a pendant in the shape of a wolf, the Bloodfang pack symbol. But this wasn't just any wolf, it was beautifully crafted, with tiny sapphires for eyes that matched the pale blue of Ryker's gaze. Oh, I whispered, touching the pendant gently. Let me, Emma said, fastening it around my neck. The wolf settled perfectly at the base of my throat, completing the look. It's time, Commander Chin announced, checking her watch. My stomach fluttered with nerves as we left my rooms and walked through the compound. Pack members had gathered along our route, offering smiles and nods of approval. Children threw flower petals in our path, and I heard several people whisper about how beautiful I looked. The ceremony was being held in the main hall, which had been transformed. Candles flickered from every surface, and white flowers decorated the space. Pack members filled every available seat, and at the front, waiting for me, stood Ryker. He wore a black suit that fit him perfectly, making him look devastating and formal at the same time. But it was his expression that made my breath catch. When he saw me walking toward him, something shifted in his pale eyes, heat, admiration, and something deeper that made my pulse race. As I approached, he stepped forward and offered me his arm. "You're beautiful," he murmured, so quietly only I could hear. "Thank you," I managed, hyper-aware of his closeness and the way his scent enveloped me. The ceremony itself was brief and traditional. We exchanged vows that spoke of duty, protection, and pack loyalty. When it came time for rings, Ryker surprised me again. The band he slipped onto my finger was stunning, white gold with small diamonds that caught the candlelight. "With this ring, I claim you as mine," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "My mate, my Luna, my equal in all things." Then it was my turn. The ring I placed on his finger was simpler but no less meaningful, a white gold band engraved with symbols representing strength and unity. "With this ring, I accept your claim," I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Your mate, your Luna, your partner in leading this pack." "You may kiss your mate," the elder performing the ceremony announced. Ryker's hands came up to cup my face, his thumbs brushing across my cheekbones. For a moment, we just looked at each other, and I saw something vulnerable in his eyes, as if he was asking permission, making sure I was okay with this. I gave the smallest nod, and then his lips were on mine. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant. But then I felt his control slip slightly, and it deepened into something that made my knees weak. His lips were warm and firm, and the kiss spoke of possession and promise in equal measure. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless and dizzy. The hall erupted in cheers and applause, pack members celebrating their alpha's marriage. But I barely heard them. All I could focus on was the way Ryker was looking at me, like I was precious, like I was his. "Mine," he whispered, so quietly only I could hear. "Yours," I replied without thinking, and saw satisfaction flare in his pale eyes. Chapter 6, After the Storm. The reception was held in the dining hall, which had been decorated with more flowers and candles. There was music, dancing, and more food than I'd ever seen at one gathering. Pack members approached throughout the evening to offer congratulations and welcome me officially to the Bloodfawn pack. I danced with Beta Morrison, with several other senior pack members, and even with some of the teenage boys who blushed adorably when they asked. But the dance I remembered most was with my new husband. Ryker moved with the same fluid grace he showed in everything else, leading me around the dance floor with confident steps. Other couples made room for us, and I was aware of everyone watching, but all I could focus on was him. "How are you doing?" he asked as we swayed to a slower song. "Overwhelmed," I admitted. "But in a good way. Your pack has been incredibly welcoming." "Our pack," he corrected. "They're yours now too." "Our pack." The words sent a warm feeling through my chest that I hadn't expected. "Ryker," I said carefully, "what happens now? I mean, what are your expectations for this marriage?" His pale eyes studied my face. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Are you expecting us to, immediately? Understanding dawned in his expression, and his hand tightened slightly on my waist. Anya, this marriage may have started as a political arrangement, but I won't force anything on you. When and if you're ready for more than just a partnership, you'll let me know. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by confusion. Why was I disappointed by his answer? Shouldn't I be grateful for his consideration? Thank you, I said. But understand, he continued, his voice dropping lower, when you do come to me, and I believe you will, it will be because you want to, not because you have to. The confidence in his voice sent heat spiraling through me. The way he said, when, not if, like he knew something I didn't. Maybe he did. As the evening wound down, my nerves started building again. Wedding night. Even if Ryker had promised not to pressure me, we would still be sharing space, sharing a life. When the last guests had offered their congratulations and departed, Ryker walked me back through the compound. But instead of heading toward my rooms, he led me in a different direction. Where are we going? I asked. Our rooms, he said simply. Our rooms. Not his, not mine. Ours. He opened a door to reveal a suite that was clearly meant for the Alpha and Luna. It was larger than my temporary quarters, with a sitting area, a massive bedroom, and what looked like a luxurious bathroom beyond. The bedroom has a sitting area with a comfortable couch, Ryker said, reading my expression. I can sleep there until you're comfortable with other arrangements. I looked around the space that would be our shared home. Everything was elegant but comfortable, clearly designed for two people to live together. This is beautiful, I said. I had it redecorated when I knew you were coming. I wanted you to feel at home here. Another surprise. Another sign that he'd put thought and care into this arrangement. Ryker, I began, then stopped, not sure what I wanted to say. He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. What is it? I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted. I don't know how to be a Luna, how to be a wife, how to be anything other than what I was before. You think I knew how to be an alpha when I took over at 21? He reached up and gently removed the pins from my hair, letting the curls fall around my shoulders. We figure it out as we go. Together. Together. There was that word again, and it made something warm unfold in my chest. I should change, I said, suddenly aware that I was still in my wedding dress. Of course. He stepped back, giving me space. I'll be in the sitting room when you're ready. I went into the bedroom and found that someone had already moved my belongings. My clothes were in the huge walk-in closet alongside Ryker's, and my personal items were arranged on the dresser. It looked like we'd been living together for years. I changed into comfortable pajamas, soft pants and a matching top that were modest but not frumpy. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who looked nervous but determined. I could do this. I could make this work. When I came out of the bedroom, I found Ryker sitting on one of the couches, reading. He'd changed too, into dark gray sleep pants and a black t-shirt that showed off the lean strength of his arms and chest. He looked up when I entered, and his gaze lingered on me in a way that made my cheeks warm. Better? He asked. Much. What are you reading? He held up the book, a collection of military strategies throughout history. Of course. Light bedtime reading, I teased, and was rewarded with one of his rare smiles. Old habits. He set the book aside. Would you like some tea? Wine? Something to help you relax? Tea sounds perfect. He moved to a small kitchenette area I hadn't noticed before and began preparing tea. I watched him work, noting the economical grace of his movements, the way his t-shirt stretched across his shoulders. Stop it, I told myself. This was dangerous territory. Here. He handed me a mug of something that smelled like chamomile and honey. Dr. Park's special blend. It's supposed to help with stress. I took a sip and sighed at the warmth spreading through me. It's perfect. We sat together on the couch, not touching but close enough that I could feel his presence. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it felt natural, peaceful. Can I ask you something? I said after a while. Always. Why did you really choose me? And don't say it was just political necessity. You could have demanded any of the eligible daughters from my pack. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he set down his mug and turned to face me. Do you remember the first treaty negotiation between our packs? 3 years ago. I nodded. You came to our territory to discuss trade agreements. You were there. In the background, taking notes for your father. You couldn't have been more than 21, but you were watching everything, analyzing every word. His pale eyes grew distant. At one point, your father was about to make a concession that would have been bad for your pack. You caught his eye and gave the smallest shake of your head. So subtle I almost missed it. I did remember that. My father had been about to agree to unfavorable terms, and I'd tried to signal him without being obvious about it. You saved your pack from a bad deal that day, Ryker continued. And I realized that behind that beautiful, diplomatic exterior was a mind as sharp as any warrior's blade. I've been thinking about you ever since. My breath caught. You have? When I learned your pack had been defeated and your father was offering you in marriage, I saw an opportunity to finally meet the woman who'd intrigued me for years. He leaned closer. You want to know why I chose you, Anya? Because I recognized a worthy opponent. And I've always preferred my battles challenging. The intensity in his voice made my heart race. Is that what this is? A battle? The most important one I've ever fought. His hand came up to cup my cheek, thumb brushing over my skin. The battle to win my mate's heart. Before I could respond, he stood and moved toward the bedroom door. Good night, Anya. Sleep well. And then he was gone, leaving me alone on the couch with my racing pulse and the realization that everything I thought I knew about this marriage had just changed. I wasn't just a political prisoner or a treaty bride. I was the object of Alpha Ryker Blackthorn's desire, the woman he'd been thinking about for years, the challenge he wanted to conquer. And despite everything, despite the circumstances that had brought us together, despite the fact that he was supposed to be my enemy, I found myself wondering what it would be like to let him win. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, as I settled into the huge, comfortable bed that smelled faintly of pine and leather, I felt anticipation curl warm and dangerous in my belly. What was happening to me? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the Blood Fawn compound in pristine white. Inside our shared suite, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and trying to understand how my feelings had become so complicated so quickly. 3 days ago, I'd been a captive bride terrified of the monster I was being forced to marry. Now I was Luna of the Blood Fawn pack, married to a man who was nothing like I'd expected and everything I hadn't known I wanted. A man who was sleeping just one room away, who had promised to wait for me to come to him. A man who seemed confident that I would. As sleep finally claimed me, my last thought was that he was probably right. And that scared and excited me in equal measure. What a pleasant yet hard thought as my consciousness fades into the dream world.
End of Part 1. What happens next? Watch out for Part 2. Titled, My Cruel Husband Set 3 Impossible Tasks to Test Me. Anya's honeymoon period ends abruptly when Ryker announces he doesn't trust her yet. To prove her loyalty and worthiness as his Luna, she must complete 3 seemingly impossible tasks. The first, tame his untamable direwolf, a massive, aggressive beast that has never allowed anyone but Ryker near it. Using her intelligence instead of brute force, Anya must find a way to connect with the creature, all while Ryker watches and evaluates her every move. But success in the first task only leads to greater challenges, and Anya begins to suspect that these tests are about more than just proving her loyalty. They're about something much deeper and more dangerous.